We can do a lot here in the Bosque with wildlife restoration. The main thing is just to leave the forest alone and let the wildlife and the systems of life repair themselves. But there's things we can also do to help move that along. The issue is that back in time, all this forest was cut, and so a lot of biodiversity was lost, and that's now rebuilding still. Most of that work is naturally being done by the trees. But we can do things like leave mounds of branches. We can increase sources of water, since there used to be more water flowing down the barranca, or there used to be water at all, and now that's been diverted up above. So increasing the amount of moisture. Of course, growing the food here will also feed food for humans, will also end up feeding some wildlife. And some of that wildlife will then become food for other types of wildlife. There's a lot of kinds of animals here. And for example, the ocelot. The ocelot hunts much smaller animals like frogs and rats and squirrels, things like that. It's a really cool cat, and they're rarely ever seen. But that's an animal that if we do the right things, we can provide more space for. Other things we can do is, one of the issues is that there's not a lot of dead fallen trees that make for a good habitat. A lot of animals would use the shelter provided by a mix of hundreds and hundreds or thousands of years of forest growing and falling. And so we can actually mimic that as we wait for the trees to grow and this to happen naturally. We can mimic that by making small shelters, and not even necessarily knowing what kind of animal will use it. Even down to the level of bees. You can make bee hotels. You can Google that. And make spots for native bees when they don't have any currently, because there's not enough dead wood around. And we can also make bigger ones, like little tiny ass huts that provide just a warm spot out of the rain for various kinds of animals. By doing that, we should increase the animal population. And of course, some of those animals will move seeds around and affect other things like the fungus in the forest. And also, it's just really interesting. It's interesting to be able to live closer to an active biological system, especially when it comes to something as exotic as some of these animals. A lot of them are nocturnal, so you won't see them. But it's nice to know they're out there, and the ones you can see are pretty interesting. This little pool is a spot where every year little tadpoles will show up just as the first rains come. Right now they're so small you can barely see them, they're just like that. But they'll fatten up pretty quickly. And these all become frogs out in the forest. It's fairly amazing that frogs can live here at all because it's so dry most of the year. But they use this very small window of opportunity to reproduce, and I believe they must end up hibernating or something, because I see big ones around now. I almost stepped on one yesterday. We want to make more pools like this, so we increase the frog population, since they're also prey for a lot of the other wildlife in the forest. We have tried to put the tadpoles in other pools in hopes that they would survive, and they did not. However, those pools were in the barranca, where there's a lot of wildlife, so it could very well be that the tadpoles were eaten so quickly that they never had a chance to become frogs and establish the cycle of frog life in those spots. The next step will be to make similar ponds to this, probably not out of concrete. This is a concrete one left over from an old chicken coop that was here. But we'll probably try and make them with cob and then seal them with resina, resin from the pine trees. And then we'll attempt to get frogs to reproduce in those little ponds as well. We don't eat those. They're quite small, but other things in the forest can eat them, and it's all part of the big cycle.